So hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me, as always, is Eryn Richardson.
Hello.
Eryn is a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service. And I'm the head of business development at the real estate marketing company, Homeania. So we've got a great show for you this week. We're going to talk today about basement apartments, specifically legally conforming versus non-legally conforming, the pitfalls and how they can impact the liability and bottom line for the purchaser, seller, and agent. But before we get into the meat of this show, we've got some interesting news coming back from the ongoing saga between the Toronto Real Estate Board and the Competition Tribunal, the never-ending saga. So in this drama that's been going on for the past few years now, that has caught the attention of real estate boards across Canada, the Competition Tribunal has ordered TREB to allow virtual office websites, those are online brokerage websites, to display listing data, including previous sales information, on any device unless a seller has affirmatively prohibited a listing from being shared anywhere on the internet. And also, TREB is also ordered to pay $1.8 million in legal fees. Of course, TREB and their lawyers have decided to appeal the process. TREB's argument is that releasing home data should be an opt-in process on the part of the homeowner, and that home sales data should only be available for a shorter period of time, not indefinitely, something like 6 months, arguing that this information should be more firmly in the hands of the homeowner. So, Eryn, what do you think about this ruling?
Oh, I'm actually really surprised. There's some deep-seated legal liability issues, I'm sure, throughout the whole process, and I'm just surprised that. And we can talk about the different competitive natures of our business and the reason why we're here and all the rest of it. But it's going to be an interesting few months to find out exactly, I guess, the more details of exactly what is going to need to happen within the TREB, Toronto Real Estate Board, and how that impacts the rest of the country, because all eyes are on TREB right now to see what it is that they're going to have to do, and all the other boards are going to decide whether or not they're going to fall in line or suffer the wrath of the competition board on their board. So,
yeah. Well, one thing I've definitely learned throughout this process is it's going to take some time, no matter what.
Yeah.
And like as I said, too, TREB's already appealing the order, so this is going to be drawn out as long as possible. So I can't see anything changing in the near future. Of course, the order said I think they had 60 days to change anything, but then they appealed it. So who knows what's going to come from there? But
well, I mean, and I don't know if it's an official appeal. I don't know a lot of details that haven't really come out because it's a legal case, of course. But the questions I mean, there's tons of them, but the main questions, I always try and take the standpoint of a consumer. I know I'm a real estate agent, and we often think like agents, but me as a consumer now, if I've sold my house, first the question is, if anybody sold their house in the last couple of years, is that information now going to be available too? And I thought as a homeowner, I'd signed a privacy policy with TREB that it wouldn't be made available. So now, is there legal implications from that standpoint? Is the first question.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it's going to have to be just like a going forward kind of thing,
Yeah.
because any sort of past agreements, I'm not sure if you can just say they're null and void in this case.
Yeah, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, so it's interesting the way that TREB's kind of taking their stance too on the whole, it being a privacy issue and having the information in the hands of the homeowners too, and being an opt-in process kind of kills the idea of having just like this historical sales data, because if you say only 30% or whatever people opt in, you can't get an accurate representation of the home sales in an area too. I think in order for it to be what the Competition Tribunal wants it to be, like an accurate portrayal of the historical sales data, it would pretty much almost have to be all of it in order for it to make sense. Like we were talking off camera before, it's almost kind of like the long form census and how like that whole argument too, like making it mandatory versus optional. You need to have something like as mandatory almost to make sure that the statistics are more accurate and representative of what's going on in the area. So
yeah. And another question is, of course, when we have to, as a board, provide that information in terms of a score or the data of the sold price, because if I sell a house tomorrow, we post the sales transaction to our board, and it's available to the members. And if that information is out to the public, whether it be through a password protected site or not, we as realtors are bound to the Business and Brokers Act. We can only give the sold information price out to the consumer that's asking for, let's say, a market evaluation, for example. If we're giving it out to everybody, my concern from a consumer standpoint is, what if that deal doesn't close? And now I have to put it back on the market. And now everybody has access to the data. Is there not any legal implications then?
Well, I'd almost assume, this just be my inkling, would be that it wouldn't be accessible to the public until after it closes, I'd assume, just in case you had any problems leading up to the closing. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not a real estate agent, so I'm not as familiar with the process as you would be. But,
well, I think that's I believe anyway, and again, I'd have to have some clarification on that. I believe that anything that we have in terms of sold price and historical data information should be made public, and that includes the deal that happened yesterday. So that deal hasn't closed yet. It's not a sold price until the house closes. So I'd be surprised to find out. Well, I am surprised to find out that we are going to be ordered to give that information out, and a little worried at the same time. But we roll with the punches too, right? And that's not the reason why people use real estate agents. It's not to get sold data. That's not the reason why we are selling houses. So I don't think it's going to affect us tremendously, but it might affect the consumer, and I think it's dangerous. I just don't quite understand why, the Privacy Commissioner hasn't stepped in on this one.
You know what it kind of reminds me of too is whenever someone's sick, and I've seen it all the time. My wife does it, I do it, and most of my family does it too. But you've got this, this weird thing growing on your back or something. You decide to Google it, and you try and be your own medical doctor, right? And you try and figure out exactly what it is. And Google usually scares the hell out of you too, because usually you're like, oh my gosh, it's like this potentially like a life-threatening thing. You go to the doctor, they're just like, it's nothing or whatever. I almost feel like in a lot of ways, releasing like this kind of data online could be something similar for homeowners too, that they look at the housing pricing information historically and they may not know how to interpret it, right? So that's where it definitely helps to have a real estate agent look at the data and more comprehensively look at it and be able to properly assess a home, because they wouldn't necessarily know what the true comparables are for their house, because that information is something that you need more of an expert or someone who's definitely involved a little bit more deeper in the real estate industry to understand.
There's lots of different things that affect the sale price of the printed sale price of a home. Was there a commission cut in commission? Was there was there extenuating circumstances that affected the price?
Too many variables, and all they're going to see online, I'm assuming, would be bedrooms, bathrooms, the date, and like the sale price mostly, right? At least that's what would be probably front facing to make it a little bit more digestible for the consumer. So
I'm not scared about releasing that information from a business standpoint, and I don't think realtors should be. That's not. I don't think that's going to affect things, and I know some realtors feel differently on that. I don't believe that. I mean, look how when we were, I don't know if it was, we were ordered. Actually, Canadian Real Estate Association was made the change in terms of putting private homeowners' names if they wanted to go onto the system. I'm going to say private. They still have to be with a brokerage, but let's say a lesser service brokerage that are just deal directly with the seller, put their information on the realtor.ca. Everybody thought the industry was going to collapse because now consumers can go on our realtor.ca and sell themselves. I mean, that had such a negligible effect on the system. And in fact, I've seen less for sale by owners out there than I've ever seen. So
there's always people that are going to cry that the sky is falling, and they tend to be the loudest voices too. So generally things are going to crash or change drastically overnight, no matter what happens. So I think it's perfectly fine, and also like you said, it's not going to negate the need for a real estate agent anytime in the near future. And if anything else too, it could be an opportunity for a lot of more tech savvy real estate agents that kind of jump on this and get on the bandwagon right off the bat, offering that home sales data and offering it online through their virtual office websites too. So where it might seem like a bad thing, there can also be an opportunity there for some.
And in terms of the, I know we were ordered as an association to pay the cost. The legal cost of the other side is 1.7 million, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was 1.7 plus there was some additional. I ended up getting up to 1.8, I think, is what it was. But anyways, 1 point something million. So
at 1.8, worst case scenario, divided by 1.8. I'm just doing the divided by 40,000 realtors on the TREB board, or more now. It's $45 a realtor. So if anybody's worried about, if you're part of the TREB board or Toronto Real Estate Board, I mean, the costs aren't what are important at this point in time either. We had some questions at an office meeting the other day, 1.7 or $8 million, we're going to have to pay that. And I asked the room, how much was that per person? They're like, oh, $400, no, it's $45. So I'm not too concerned on that end as well. I mean, they fought a good fight. I think it was important that they got a lot of issues out to the table. They're making some good changes. They have made changes over with the vows and all the rest of it. This is just sort of, and I don't know how long it's going to take, whether it's at the end of the road too. So like you said, it could go on for another couple of years. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, so do you have anything else to say about that, or should we be moving on to our main segment?
Oh, we're going to move on.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about legally conforming basement apartments. I'll let Eryn take away this segment and intro it, maybe.
When it comes to the sale or the leasing of basement apartments, whether it be from the landlord-tenant side of things or whether or not it be from a seller and buyer side of things, those are the four angles I want to sort of look at this from. The issues that can come from non-legal or non-conforming basement apartments. First of all, the use of the term legal is thrown out very loosely. However, non-conforming is probably a little more accurate. It doesn't conform with the bylaws within the municipality you're residing in. So if you have a basement apartment and you want to rent it out, the municipalities will have some sort of guidelines as to what you'll need to do to conform from a safety standpoint and to be, let's call it, legalized with the town or registered with the town. And every municipality is different. So you have to go and check your own municipality. And this is what we do as real estate agents in order to provide the service to a buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord. The issue arises, of course, when, let's say let's do buying or selling a house that has a basement apartment in it. First of all, as agents, we've been pretty good at, let's say our educational process has been pretty good at educating us not to disclose the fact that this is an apartment, because if it ceased to become an apartment on closing, because the municipal bylaw states that when transfer of ownership happens, the new owner must re-register. Okay. There could be an issue, of course, with the fact that, well, I bought a legal basement apartment, now it's not legal, and then they go back after the seller. So we never really like to say it's a legalized basement apartment for many different reasons, liability-wise. So be careful when you are selling a basement apartment or even purchasing on behalf of the buyer. Okay, so if you're purchasing on behalf of the buyer, make sure that they realize that it's not always going to be a possibility. It may not be legal conforming on closing, and you have to check with the municipal bylaw officers to find out what your regulation is. The main topic and the thing that I really want to talk about today is, should you list or should you represent a landlord or a tenant for an illegal non-conforming or non-conforming basement apartment? So, Linas, if I was going to represent you and you said, listen, Eryn, there's one around the corner I want to see. It's a basement apartment. Looks fantastic. I'm interested in it. Can you prepare an offer to lease that for me? And I looked into it and it was non-conforming illegal. What are some of the questions you may have for me?
Well, I've definitely lived in non-conforming basement apartments in the past. But from my standpoint, I guess I'd say, why does it matter if it's non-conforming or conforming to me, as long as like how's that going to affect me in the long run? That'd be my first question right away, is what's the big difference as like a consumer anyhow? Right.
There's a safety issue. Mm-hmm. So if it's conforming, I would think the municipality has done what they could to make sure that it's a safe living space, that if there was a fire, you would be hopefully able to get out in time, and there's enough safety precautions, whether it be certain double layered drywall or sprinkler heads, or, in terms of exits, there's enough exits, stuff like that. So the municipality goes through a process of making sure that they're safe, and the fire department and all the rest.
I guess my next question too would probably be, are my rights compromised as a tenant if it isn't a conforming or registered apartment as well? Like, is this something where you're not protected as a leasee, I guess, the same way that you would be for a conforming basement apartment, or is there any distinguishing bit there?
It actually works in this. I find in the opposite direction. There's less protection on the landlord. So, for example, you're leasing and you decide not to pay one of the months, and they start coming after you for you're late on payments and stuff. I find the tenant uses that leverage and says, "Listen, I know this is not legal. I'm going to go to the town and start telling on you, and you're going to, not be able to rent this anymore," and all the rest of it. So they use it a bit as leverage. I find more often than not. But my concern isn't so much whether or not we should or should not be from a legal standpoint. Renting it to you, Linas, I would have a conversation with you that goes some similar to this. Linas, I know you love the place, but I'm a professional. I have moral obligations. I would feel horrible to find out if you got hurt or somebody that was staying there was hurt because of a fire or because of something that happened from a safety standpoint if it wasn't legal and conforming. I'm just concerned for your well-being, and I would hate to see something happen to you. So if you're interested, yeah, no problem, Linas. If you're interested in that, you're welcome to make the decision to go ahead with the whoever's leasing it. But I'm just not going to be able to help you in that matter, just because I don't feel comfortable, and I hope you can understand, the reason why I feel that way. And
I guess as a professional, all you can do in a lot of cases is just to do the advisory role too. Like, for instance, my mother-in-law, she's looking to sell her home in the near future, or maybe just rent out the back as well. And it's definitely not a legally conforming apartment. People have lived there in the past, and she's been their landlord essentially. But I mean, it's very costly to get everything up to code and everything for what's required to make it a legally conforming apartment. So, I mean, it's not going to necessarily stop her from renting it out if she makes a financial decision, just kind of leave it as is and rent it out the back. And there will be people that definitely will enter into lease agreements with her for it. So, I mean, it's tough because it can cost a lot of money. I guess if you're representing a seller who's looking to sell the property, that's always a concern for them. And I guess if I was the homeowner and planning on selling my property, the first thing I'd ask you is, is it worth spending the money to make sure that this basement apartment that I've got is up to the municipal code, or should I just sell it kind of as is and not really worry about it? Maybe obviously not advertise it as having a basement apartment, but you could always tell the people that you've been renting it out or whatever. I'm not sure what the situation would be, but yeah.
There are specialists in most towns, in big cities and whatnot, that specialize in doing inspections on basement apartments to see what it would take to legalize it. And a lot of people are scared to call the town because they're going to put a red flag on that property, and they're going to find out you're doing something wrong. I don't think people should be scared of that. However, if you are nervous about that, you can bring through a specialist in your town, in your city, that will come in and they'll tell you. They know the municipal bylaws, they know the code of what needs to happen, and they'll give you a quote as to how much it will cost you in order to bring that to code. Now, my suggestion, if somebody did come to me, let's say, Linas, you're now owner of the property and you want to lease out the basement, and you've asked for my help to do that. And of course, if I get your business now, and I'm doing this as a favor, hopefully when you go to sell, you'll be using me as a real estate agent. So my future business depends on me leasing out your basement apartment that happens to be illegal and non-conforming. I'm put in a tough position, because if I turn you away, you're going to use another real estate agent. There goes all my business in the future. So that's where, I'm dealing with some agents within our office that are asking that question, and I'm kind of going, geez, that's a lot of, So I think the best advice I'd have for you, Linas, if you're going to sell your house, or if you're going to, rent out the basement apartment, is that you go and get it legalized. Even if it costs you $10,000, you're going to get that and more when you sell it as a legal basement apartment that has been registered and previously with the town. We'll never guarantee it going forward unless it can be, but the fact that you've gone through the process, you've got a certificate, it makes your house that much more valuable on the resale end of things, limits your liability in an insurance standpoint. And if somebody was to get hurt in your basement apartment, whether it be through a fire or, then you're not going to have the conscience, it on your conscience as well down the road if something were to happen and put somebody in that position. So why not go through the process and do it properly?
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Well, I mean, especially, for most people, it ends up being more of a dollar, like a dollar amount thing, because you can say there's these risks and potential legal hazards, but it's one of those things that you just assume nothing's going to happen to you. It's like my son riding his bike, he's trying to get his helmet on. He thinks nothing's going to happen to him, but as a parent, I want to make sure he's wearing that helmet all the time, right? So most people don't look at the risk necessarily that way. So it usually just does come down to a dollars and cents bit. So, for my mother-in-law, for sure, she's going to look at it and be like, hey, how much is it going to cost? And how much am I potentially going to get back from the resale value of the home? And I'm obviously, like, the risks and the safety concerns are important. But I think for a lot of people, just realistically, they just assume that it's not going to happen to them, right? So.
We have spoken to the Real Estate Council of Ontario on how they see putting, let's say, a buyer into a basement apartment that's non-legal. They're concerned more that we do disclosures to the buyer or the tenant, for example. We always say buyer, but the tenant that's going in there. We do a disclosure that states that we did not recommend, the basement apartment because of the non-legal, non-conforming, and they took it on their own liability behalf. Still, I don't care. I don't care if there's proper disclosure. I'm not going to get sued. I'm not caring about a lawsuit down the road. I'm a little bit, but I'm caring about my moral compass, and knowing that is going to weigh heavily on my conscience if something was to happen to the person I put into a illegal basement apartment. We say illegal, non-conforming, however you want to say it, but it's scary to think that it could come down to that. But there has been, situations in the past where people have lost their life in a fire in a basement that was an apartment and it wasn't conforming use. So, it's just, my suggestion would be try and convince the landlord or the owner of the property in order to properly legalize it. And if you can't, I wouldn't touch it. And if you want to try and keep their business, maybe let them know that there's Kijiji, Craigslist, and you're happy to help them review some of the documents as long as they understand you're not representing them. And, you can help them along the process. But yeah, it's not something you want to get into. It's not worth it. The money's not worth it.
For sure. Well, I will give my mother-in-law that advice for sure.
There you go.
Is there anything else you want to talk about on this subject, or should we move along?
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Okay, so we'll just move into the app of the week. And this week's app is Waze, W-A-Z-E. It's an app that's available on both iOS and Android. You can get them in the respective app stores on those devices. And basically Waze, the way I like to think of it is it's almost like a Google Maps competitor, more like on the GPS navigation side of things. Waze is really good if you want to get from point A to point B and you want to make sure it's the fastest way possible, avoiding any sort of traffic, construction, that kind of thing. And the way that Waze works is it's crowdsourced. So anyone who encounters a traffic accident, they'll actually report it on the app, and the app will note that and make the proper calculations to take you on alternate routes if it does to know that there's an accident along the way. Now, kind of interestingly, though, Waze, and I mentioned it is kind of similar to Google Maps, was purchased by Google a couple of years ago for $1.15 billion. Man, I wish I came up with the idea for Waze. It's amazing how much money, but I mean, it's Google, and I guess it makes sense. And you're actually seeing a lot of the Waze functionality start to make its way into Google Maps, especially on your Android devices. So Eryn likes this app a lot. I'm assuming you use it quite frequently?
Actually, it's interesting. It was brought up, 2-3 years ago when it was, let's say, at the height of popularity when it first came out. And it's just gained traction, and people are using it more and more, and some people swear by it. I don't think I swear by it because I've got my GPS in my car. But I started using it, and I started really getting jealous of the fact my GPS doesn't have some of the functions in there, and started to realize that I spent an extra $3,000 or $4,000 on that GPS in my car. and my phone would do a better job. Yeah, I started to really, and there's some good features on there that, and there's one where you can text or email your location to where you're going. So let's say somebody calls you and you say, yeah, I'm going to be about 10 minutes late. I'll text you where I'm at. And you text it to them. They can see where you're progressing to the appointment that you're late for. So they know where you are and they know how long you're going to be. And it's quite a good feature, especially when you're running late on an appointment when you're dealing in real estate. So
that's a really handy feature. That's one that I didn't actually know about too. And one of my questions for you is, as a user of Waze, was going to be, why do you use that as opposed to, say, Google Maps or Apple Maps if you're using an iPhone too? Because obviously there is mapping and navigation functionality baked right into those devices. So like, what would make you or anyone else go over to Waze? And I guess that's one big reason right there. So
one of them, and the other one, I was going up north last weekend, and my Waze, I was using Waze. I said, you know what, I'm going to pop open Waze. And it was telling me that there was a car pulled over to the right. I looked off to the right, there's that car. Like, it knows real time. People are plugging these things in and using this app so readily that you're getting real time information that quick. So the other one's cops ahead, slow down. It's a bit of a radar detector as well. So it's quite neat.
It amazes me that people have the time to report all of these things too, especially with all the, you don't want to be texting while driving and such too. It makes me wonder when people are actually reporting these. But
and it's good too, just from a safety standpoint. You do have the ability to connect it, and most newer cars these days, where it can give you the notifications about things that are coming up verbally. You don't have to look at your phone, which is obviously how I use it, and everybody else should use it.
For sure.
I don't want another handheld ticket.
Yeah. I imagine in a few years, pretty much Waze will probably be rolled into Google Maps the way that Google works with all these things. Like I said, they've slowly been rolling them into Google. I use Google Maps almost exclusively for navigation and such. I'm going to try a Waze out. But I did notice that maybe about a year ago or so, they started adding in the way, they even said like Waze notifications about like where the accidents are and such. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to check out. I'm going to definitely check out Waze and give it a whirl.
Great.
Okay, so I think we're getting to the end of our show there. So I'll just conclude it off here. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites. It really helps. You can watch this and past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. So this podcast was brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, an exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that help you sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. Find out why so many top agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye now.